Hey guys, this is What If Deku Was a God, Part 1. Now, this is a lot more of the origin type story for Deku to become his own deity or own type of, I guess God or something. Now, I'm using that very lightly because I'm a very Christian person, but I don't want to say that word too much, but I'm probably going to say it a lot, so just forgive me. But this is What Deku Was a God, Part 1. This is going to be about a 5 to 6 part series, and a majority of my my part 1 to 6 and 5 part series is mainly, short, right to the point, gets down the script and not the script, but basically gets down the fill the whole story, and then the rest of the parts are about hours, 30 couple minutes long. Now, we start our story off in the very past, in the distant past, as we see a old white man, not old white man, about in his 30s, that's jacked, by the way, that looks similar to All Might in body type, but looks like, I don't know, Grand Diego, or Grand Gendra, I don't remember, the speed guy that trained All Might with the speed quirk. Basically, he would have been fighting against some sort of demons and would have thrown a chunk of lightning towards a nearby god, the name of Khonshu, as he would have fell off his feet, falling off down a pyramid, as this would be a great war. As Egyptian times and Greek times would have, Greek and Egyptian gods would have started to fight in this huge war. As this huge war would have broken out, as seen other gods from other pantheons from all around the world in different, pretty much folklore of monsters as well, guiding these gods into war, seeing as Hercules, demigods, and a bunch of others fight to the death, as it would have been a huge pantheon of gods, the Greek, Egyptian, Norse, everything going up against one complete point, as they would try to fight for ultimate power to be the only gods left in the world. As time after time, the Greek gods being the first gods, and years later that, the Egyptian gods, and years before that, somewhere in between, the Norse gods. As years would have gone by, other pantheons being born into the world by some sort of unknown force no one even knew the power of, a force of pure and utter nothingness, but everything. It being the source of everything in the whole entire existence of this world. How it made the world, how it did everything, how it made gods to make this world more, or make the idea of him more shine away. As over time, the gods would have forgot that they even came from an unknowable force that was nothing but everything at the same time. As we would have seen Zeus fight against Odin, as they would have had a huge fight, climactic, throwing huge lightning pillars, throwing magic, and all sorts of other fight, and breaking down pyramids near them alongside statues and colosseums and everything going into smithereens. As eventually he would have been overpowered, as Odin would have been on the floor, as he would have taken down his staff, stabbing Zeus straight in the chest, as Zeus would have fell off on the ground, as he would have pulled out the blade from his chest. As Zeus would have looked at Odin, saying, "You'll never win the war," saying that everybody will be fighting for this. As Odin says, "No one will be fighting after what I'm going to do." As he takes off another sword, an ancient sword, a sword birthed as soon as the actual universe was made, the exact same point. The World Killer, a sword unlike anything of all, a sword that can kill anything, even the thing it made, even the thing that made it. It could kill anything. It being a earth shatterer, it being a god killer. Literally, as it could kill literally anything, just with a little scrape or scratch from it. Not even a stab, just a little scratch or prick would kill any living person or any living thing that touched it. As long as it could cut through the skin, that is. And if it was hit hard enough, it could cut through basically anything, including any type of, animal, creature, or god. As the sword could also weaken god powers a little bit. Not much to a point, but enough to give you, I guess, a 1% chance of actually laying a strike. As this sword will be powerful enough to kill any god. As Zeus would have been on the ground saying, "Is that what I think it is?" As Odin would have said, "Goodbye, Zeus." As he would have went for a final slash, as out of nowhere, the god from the Egyptian pantheon, Khonshu, would have stepped in, grabbing the sword and ripping it out of Odin's hand. So the sword would have cut through his hands, or would have not cut through his skin since he was wearing bandages on his hands, as he would have thrown it towards a nearby other god, Hermes, as Hermes would have grabbed the blade and would have sprinted off, blasting off, using his super speed to get out of the way as fast as possible. As Owen would have told Loki to go after him, as Loki would have followed him on horseback, as his horse would have had magical abilities, being able to catch up somewhat, not as fast as, Hermes, but able to catch up to him close enough so, well, his magic would be in range of Hermes. As Loki would have gone for a final strike, using his hand like a gun trigger, conjuring up magic to basically kind of mimic a spirit gun type move. As he would have looked and made a correct headshot aim, as it would have shot Hermes. As Hermes would have dodged it the second it hit his hair, as eventually it would have pretty much went straight through Hermes' shoulder, as he would have moved fast as possible, getting out the way. As he would have fell off, as he would have pretty much rumbled and tumbled miles and miles because he was running really fast, as he would eventually fall into a nearby pillar, making the building fall on top of him. As well, pretty much he would have came out of the rubble, chucking the sword at Loki, killing Loki instantly. As Loki would have fell off the ground, off his horse, as he would have grabbed the sword, Hermes running towards Loki, grabbing the sword out of Loki's chest and running off. As eventually Thor would have seen this, and Thor coming down to the heavens and throwing Mjolnir straight in Hermes' face, as Hermes would have dodged it, cutting through Thor. As Thor would have had armor on, it not touching his skin, as it would have only glazed him, pushing him back. As Thor would have known the power of the sword, him checking his body for wounds, seeing that it was none from the sword. As Hermes would have been long gone by that point, as Hermes would have found a distant area or distant land, and pretty much sticking that sword in the soil and burying it for decades and decades, for people to find it years and years later. For people or gods that were in the right mind, hoping that it would be there for decades and decades. Years long after the gods are gone. As he would have ran back to the war, as the war would have raged on, multiple other gods dying and other gods thriving, and the pantheon and the afterlife of multiple of these realms being broken down in sections and fragments, as eventually we switch to years later in current time, as we switch to Deku's origin. As we were seeing Deku opening his eyes in the hospital bed, but not a hospital bed, more or less a palace, as we would be on Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus being more or less another realm other than just being a big mountain, as it would have been a flying mountain at this point, being undetectable by any human means, and even humans being able to fly through Mount Olympus. But normally, Mount Olympus moving in a circular area around Greece, basically making it impossible for people to find it, since it would be moving around in a circle in a different time frame, making it virtually undetectable, and also it moving so fast to a point where if anybody did catch up with it, they would most likely their brain wouldn't be able to function in the type of atmosphere it was taken in, because it's godly energy coursing through that mountain, that area, that palace, that other realm that's flying over Greece for thousands of years. As we see, Zeus is an older man, a lot more gray hairs, and has gained a little bit of a gut, but still is kind of muscular. As we see Hera actually being loving this child, it being a perfect child from Zeus, but hers. As we know, Zeus is a player. He cheats a lot, like Hercules. Now, original Hercules, I don't think he was ever Zeus's son, but original Hercules, I think it was Perseus. Yeah, Perseus was one. I think it was Troy is the son of a Greek goddess. I don't really remember what her name is. I think the goddess of wisdom or future or like health or something. I don't know. But pretty much we see that Deku was raised by Zeus. As Zeus in this timeline, years later after the war, being humbled, him actually not being as cruel, cheating, and not as weak-minded as his weak self was, or his older self was. Not thinking of humans as tools, but thinking them as people that had, well, more or less taken up more space, as he would have thought humans were disgusting and ignorant creatures even more, hating them even more even after the war. As we would see that Deku would have grown up on, well, Mount Olympus, being loved by Hera, as Hera would have loved her son more than she would ever love Zeus, because it is her son. A son that's perfect, a son that's beautiful, a son that could be and be powerful and more powerful than Zeus, as she got a prophecy from it from an oracle years before Deku's conception, as she was told that she would have a child with Zeus, her child, a child stronger than Zeus, and a child that would be of pure and utter good. As she would have been kind of excited for this, her giving her all to get pregnant by Zeus for the next upcoming years, eventually having Deku years later. As Zeus would never found out about this oracle or the prophecy, as Zeus would have been, well, raising Deku as his own, raising him more than he would ever raise any of his other bastard children, teaching him everything about the ways, but Hera teaching him other things, and telling him how his father was cruel, how his father was a cheater, how his father was manipulative, how his father was a horrible, horrible god, man, was a horrible person before he was born. As Deku would be treated with a bunch of love from Hera, but after Deku would have turned about 13, 14, he would have started to well, get abused by Zeus. As Zeus would have started to fall back into his old ways, him still being humble, not being as well dictatorial as it is more laws and bias and other things gods have to go through to even do a simple thing as in to kill a singular mortal. As we would see that Zeus would have fought Hera once, slapping her across the face, as we would find out that Zeus went back to Earth and had another bastard child, as Zeus would have been told by Hera that he is a horrible man and he's a horrible god. He's pathetic and he thinks he's the most powerful but should not. As Hera runs off, her grabbing Deku by the hand, or grabbing Korra by the hand, because that's what Deku's name is, Korra. Basically, because Deku in this canon, he actually has aqua blue hair and bright blue eyes. But basically, Hera would have told him that she's never coming back and she will take her son with her. As Zeus would have been enraged, saying, "You're not taking my son. You're not taking the heir to Olympus with you to God knows where." As Zeus would have been told by Hera that nothing you can do to stop me. As well, out of nowhere, we would have seen Hermes show up. As Hermes would have been kind of an uncle figure to pretty much Deku, basically being a brotherly love, since Hermes in Greek mythology is actually one of Zeus's bastard children. So yeah, as Hermes hears this conversation, saying, "Dad, you slept with another mortal woman, another bastard child." As Hera would have grown to accompany or tolerate Hermes, not hating him as much as other of Zeus's bastard children, like not Achilles, but like Perseus and Hercules. As she would have looked at him, saying to get out of this conversation now, Hermes, before you get hurt. As she would have looked back at Zeus, saying, "There's nothing you can do to stop me." As she would have told, narrating purposes, I'm just going to narrate him as Deku or Zuko, who would have told Deku to follow her now, as we're leaving your father. He's a horrible man. I've told you this since you were born. He was never a good person. He only put this facade on because he knew deep down inside you were more powerful than him than he will ever know. You are the future of all of this. as Deku would be kind of sheltered, not really knowing much about the other Greek gods, or not really knowing much about any of the other pantheon. Him knowing some stories from his mother and other books he's read of the Greek pantheon, but not knowing much about the Norse pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, and other gods. As eventually we will get switched to, well, basically back on Earth. As we will see is Inko Midoriya basically just shopping for groceries, and her walking out of the grocery shop, as we would have seen her normal day to day, as we would have seen that she lost her Asashi, as her Asashi would have died about a month later in a car accident after she would have had a miscarriage with canon Azuka Midoriya. As we would have seen that Hera would have been having a huge fight with Zeus, as it would have became a physical fight, Hermes stepping in time to tell his father not to do it, as his father would have told him to get out the way now. Hermes pimp slapping Hermes like a little girl, throwing him aside, as he would have ran towards Hera, as Hera would have grabbed her child and running off. As well, basically Deku would have been following his mother, as he would have looked behind him, and his father having a dark, menacing, and more or less angry face. A face that shook fear in Deku's body, made his body pretty much stiff, made his heart race, made him feel like he was going to die, as if he was truly and utterly scared of his father, the first time in his whole life. As Deku would have sped up a little bit, grabbing his mother, and eventually pulling his mother to a point where his mother wasn't even running anymore. Deku was running and grabbing his mother by his side, his mother starting to figure out that Deku was running as fast as Hermes. As he would have been running incredibly fast, him booking through the whole entire Mount Olympus, going to mountain area to mountain area, to house to chamber to chamber, running through walls, being phased and not even a bit, as he would have been running as fast as humanly possible. As eventually he would have opened a portal, him teleporting to Japan, Daikyo Beach, as he would have dropped his mother by, as his mother would have gotten up, her looking exactly like Inko Midoriya in terms of her face expression. Her looking exactly like young Inko Midoriya with purple hair, purple eyes, and whatchamacallit, and also pretty much, I guess, like an inch taller than canon young Inko. Now, she would have been looking around, basically saying, "Where are we, son?" As she would have tried to use her powers, as she would have suddenly figured out that she was near, or she was in Japan, Daikyo Beach. As she would have said that this is perfect. The Japan or Chinese pantheon, their gods here, are powerful, weaker level than us, but they're very much powerful and they can kill us. But their power that remained over here is very much more of a stealthy type. They'll keep us safe. I had to make a deal with one of them, though. I know one of them, an old friend. They would have visited a Japanese god, Ryujin, as he would have been kind of the Japanese, I guess, mythology equivalent of Poseidon, as he would have surrounded the waters around Japan, China, North Korea, and South Korea, and the ponds and water and pretty much anything that's not a part of other countries or other places of the earth, only places that are surrounded about a couple 100 miles from and out of, Japan. As he would have been a water guardian, as he would have been depicted in his more, mythology books, depicted as a giant water type dragon. But in this mythology, he would have been able to take that form, but he would have mainly enjoyed the form of a tall but yet muscular middle-aged man with dark blue beard and dark blue hair and bright white eyes that had a type of a type of reptilian pupils. As he would have looked up, as he would have seen Hera and her daughter and her son, as he would have looked at them saying, haven't seen you in a long time, Hera. how are you? How's my child? As we would have been told that Hera actually had another child, a child that was born out of hatred for Zeus. So she would have gone on to have a second child, another child, with this Japanese god. His name being being his name being Perso. As Perso would have been a demigod, him having not a demigod actually, because he would have been a full-fledged god, because he would have had both of his parents were gods. So, it's simple. He was given to an oracle to be raised as he was given to a goddess of wisdom, not a goddess of wisdom, but a goddess of the future, something like that. Basically, to raise him, as he would have been raised by some other either Norse or Egyptian god off somewhere else off world or on planet Earth, because in this depiction, this version of this Japanese god, this water god, was actually kind of a douche. Put it simple, he was never going to be a good father. Even if he did love the mother, he's not a good dad. He's not a good dad. So to put it simple, he was never going to take care of that child. And Hera never really wanted to raise that child. She fell in love with it a little bit, but not as much as Deku. As Deku was told that he had another brother, but by his mother. As Deku basically asked the man, or the god, how can he help us? As he says, I can give you protection, and I'll also talk to the council, the Japanese gods, to let you guys slide a little bit. Now, guys, I'm not really be referring to these Japanese gods' names unless I know their names. So either I'm gonna be saying what they're the gods of, or just saying their name. I'm not really Japanese culture, Japanese gods haven't really been depicted in mainstream that much, so not much people know them. So maybe in part 2 I'll probably gonna do a lot more research on Japanese gods. Now their names are really hard to memorize, so I don't really know. But basically, we get told that, well, the story, everything that's going to go on is that he's going to talk to the council. They're going to give him the heads up if you guys can live here under our protection at a price, if they give us a price. As he goes to the council, as we get told that this deal is going to be, well, Hera will be working alongside gods to keep pretty much, well, yokai and other mythical and other gods out of their, well, area and most section, and also trying to keep the population of demigods down, because some of the gods from Greek pantheon and other people like that and Americans have came over, the demigods and others being spread around the whole world, and then never knowing they're demigods until they hit puberty. But in this world, quirks do still exist, like any other, but a quick way to find out if somebody's a demigod is if it takes a lot to make them bleed. And normal, conventional human, attacks or weapons only stun them or pretty much irritate them. But god-type weapons can actually cut them and make them, bleed. Unless they're a demigod. And if they're a demigod, they can be hurt by any other human, but they have god-type of powers and strength. They have to have some sort of enchanted abilities to be invulnerable like a pure-blooded god is. Now, we basically get told that there is a place Deku can go while Hera works with the gods. As Deku is told that he would have to go undercover as a student, a college student, to class 1A or UA. As UA would have been a college, because in this canon, Deku would be about 14 in god years, but about a couple hundred years in human years. So yeah, Deku had the body and the appearance of about a 15-year-old, about 15, 16-year-old, as he would have been kind of a chiseled type kid, and also being kind of the same height as a normal human. But in gods, Greek gods are actually like 7 feet, 6 feet average. So yeah, and they're like more shrunk down forms. So Hera's about 7 feet, like a straight up avatar height, alongside the Japanese water god as well. As Deku would have been about as tall as an average, human male at the same height as Deku, a little bit taller, and a lot more leaner and a lot more muscular. About the same body type Deku had after the 10-month arc training with All Might, but a little bit more chiseled and more defined. Now, Deku would have been told by Hera to stay safe, as she'll be back in a month's time, as to stay out of trouble and don't bring the attention of your father. As this whole story will take place in a couple months until Hera comes back, but Hera would have left the story for now, so she'll come back later on. But we get told that Deku was going to UA as a college student, as he is given some, papers and stuff by a god of wisdom of Japan, as he would have been given books, reading, and also him just being pretty much zapped into the history, given a history of being on Earth for years in the school district of Japan, as he would have been told to go, and he'll just be accepted in. And yeah, so Deku goes to pretty much UA as he walks in the class one day, as he sees Zawa. Zawa looks at him being kind of confused, but him being told by a nearby executive that, or nearby pretty much the assistant principal being told that, well, he's a new student here, a exchange student from Greece. As Deku would have looked very weird, but basically them saying he's from Greece, as Deku would have understood them, as it would have been another power Deku would have had. Deku would be very OP, but for now he's going to be kind of inexperienced. Now, Deku's godly powers, like his other normal powers, have been exposed or are, coming out of late. As Deku ages slowly, as one of his powers. Also, him having a type of minimum control over electricity and lightning. Also being able to have super speed, somewhat of a superhuman strength, but not as strong as other gods, right now at least. And him also being incredibly fast in terms of reaction time, since he is fast enough to keep up with Hermes now. Now, we see that Deku also can convert any language he hears to his own language, English or Greek. Now, he would have looked around as the class would have talked to him, as some of the girls, even not Inko, but Momo, talking to him and kind of flirting with him a little bit, since he did see that Deku was kind of attractive. Now, Deku would have looked at all of them, as he would have had a type of power, a type of seduction power. Now, it wouldn't work on anybody, but it would give girls near him like a nudge, not like a force to make them fall in love with him, or make them like a nudge to make them a little bit more attractive to Deku than they already are, if they are attracted to him. So Deku's power, secondary power, he's kind of like a attraction power, but it's more or less a nudge, not like a push, but like a nudge, like kind of like Gambit's powers, because he has a power of a power to hypnotize girls unconsciously, onto him unconsciously, but hypnotize girls into basically being attracted to him. Or he has a persuasion type. He can persuade people to do things if he is like good with his words, because he has that type of power that persuades people. So yeah, so Deku can persuade people and make girls like a little bit, like to a 0.1% more attracted to him, but it's more of a persuasion and not as much as a controlled mind power. So if a girl can't like fall in love with Deku if they are not attracted to him at all, so it's not like a force to make people like him. So pretty much Deku and the rest of the class is brought out by Izawa's. He tells everybody to get ready and to basically do the test. As they do the ball throw, as Deku was told to go up first, as Izawa isn't really that keen on this new student, but he lets him pass anyways, telling him to throw the ball as hard as possible. As Izawa sees him grab the ball, as Deku chucks the ball. I mean, I said Deku has this type of superhuman strength, not as powerful as other gods, but just to give you an example of how powerful gods really are in this canon, Deku throws the ball all the way past the sun into another planet. Like, straight up, Deku chucks the ball fast as freak. As Deku is absolutely, everybody in the class is absolutely shocked at how strong Deku is. As we get switched away from that, as we get switched to, well, the long jump. As Deku aces that with flying colors by just straight up flying, not flying, but more or less jumping really high, like a single bound, over the sand pit with minimal to no effort. As pretty simple, Deku, since the gravity on pretty much the gravity on the higher points and higher places on Mount Olympus is actually super dense. So like all the gods naturally, if they're born on Olympus, they're a little bit stronger than, you know, weaker. They're a little bit stronger than gods that are born somewhere else. So yeah. But anyways, other than that, what else? Yep, the race. Deku like flies past that first place. First place in everything, to put it simple. Grip test strength, first place in everything. He breaks the gripper actually. So Deku gets first place in everything, as everybody is super shocked by this. As Zawa thinks at first maybe a strength boosting quirk, but then all of these examples, Deku is using his pure and other like raw strength and density of being like him being a full-fledged god. As he's not a demigod like I did in other stories, he's an actual god. Now, not god of what just yet. Don't know what he is until the end of the story, but have your guys' ideas in the comments below. Now, basically, we end off the video there, as we not a video there, but the day off there. Deku goes back to his campus area in his room as he goes to sleep. As Deku wakes up, quote unquote, wakes up, as he opens his eyes in a river. As he gets out the river, as it's a river of sand. As he grabs it and he looks around, as he's touched on the shoulder by a man in black, as the man in black tells him that in a dream you can never really know where it started or where you were or what point we are at. As Deku grabs his coffee and says, "What do you mean? We came from as the man says, "We're dreaming right now, Zuko. Did you not remember where we were when I first picked you up? When I first plucked you out of your mind? We were never at a coffee shop. We never lived together. We were never roommates. We're not even here." As Deku wakes up in his bed, as he sees a man in the corner of his room in black, as he looks at him and saying, "I'll talk to you later, Zuko. You're interesting. Your mind is filled with cloudiness, a judgment. Your mind is everywhere, but it's weak. You have to work on that." As he disappears and fades into the wall, as Deku gets up, turning on his light, as he has lightning coursing through his hands, about to shock this thing, but it's gone. Sorry for the music in the background. But it's simple. Deku looks around as he sees sand on the floor. As Deku sees a man disappeared, as he has a feeling that something's going to go down. As we leave out the story there. So, basically, if you know the type of character I'm going to be introducing in the story, that's going to be kind of a protagonist / helper of Deku throughout his journey of becoming the next greatest deity beyond Zeus. Basically, yeah. So I'm gonna be doing seasons of this. So the first part is gonna be Deku going up against some members of the Greek pantheon and also coming across some Egyptian gods. And then season 2 is just gonna be straight up Egyptian gods and Deku trying to figure out his way after the whole Greek thing, or Greece and the gods of Olympus. Okay. So yeah. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.